Howdy everyone, welcome back to Curious Planet. Today I want to shoot a quick and simple video on faults. Okay, so at the most basic level, faults can be broken into three basic types. There's compressional faults where rock is being forced together, it's being pressed together. There's extensional faults where rock is being pulled apart. And there's transform faults where rock is sliding past other rock. And so let me draw this on the board real quick. We've got the ground here, and maybe a tree. That's a nice little hill. Convergent boundary. Our forces are coming together. And this rock is brittle, so it can't just, bend up to accommodate that force. Like a piece of rubber or something, it's a solid rock, so it's brittle and it's gonna break. Well, if it's being pushed together like this, it has to crack at an angle. And then, if you notice, this angle, it almost looks like a ramp. And so you keep pushing these rocks together and all this material has to go somewhere, and this crack makes a ramp. So this fault block is gonna get shoved up the ramp. And so we can imagine this block got pushed up and over this block because of these forces. Over time, that'll erode down. But the thing is, this crack is it's still there. As long as these forces keep pushing the rock together, this will keep getting shoved up further and further. And what you're gonna see, so this was sediments that were deposited in layers like that. We have layer A, B, and C. And then it started to get pushed like this, and our fault formed, and this block gets shoved up like that. This block didn't go anywhere, right? So it's still like that. But this block got pushed up. So now A is up here, and then B, and then C. And do you see this offset? Instead of A just running to A, B to B, you now have A is against B and B's against C. And if you knew that this is supposed to be the order of how things go, and then you drill into the rock and you see these repeating units, let's say you drilled a hole right here and you saw A and then B and then A again. Well, what happened? You can't have it deposited at two different times in history. It's only a single unit. Well, you had some faulting. This type of fault where there's compressional forces and rock gets thrust above other rock, it's called a thrust fault, made by compression. That's one of three. Okay, our next fault is the opposite. Let's draw the ground again. Now the forces are pulling apart. It's the opposite of the thrust fault, right? We have extension. Well, we're still gonna get a crack in the ground, right? Because the rock is brittle and it has to crack. And yes, this will also be at an angle, but what's gonna happen to these different blocks? You're not gonna have this one thrust over the other anymore. It's being pulled in this direction. But it can't just pull straight out like this, right? You can't have this happen. Look at all this space, right? That doesn't exist. You're gonna fall through that and go to the center of the earth? That's not physically possible. So what actually happens is that this rock is gonna move in that direction, but it has to stay touching on this fault plane. And the only thing it can do is go down at an angle like that along the plane. And then you're gonna end up with something like this, okay? Where this block has moved down relative to the fault plane. And what you often see in real life is this will be a low-lying basin. And if this is a rainy area, you'll get, let's do blue, you'll get lakes and things that will accumulate there. And then this is your mountain range, right? So if there's a little person here, wow, looking up, there's a mountain range here where there used to be relatively flat ground. This is called a normal fault. And there's nothing fancy or secret here. It's literally just called a normal fault because whoever came up with this name thought that the rock going down seemed like a normal thing to do. There's an important concept that you need to know for describing these faults, and that is, so I've been calling each of these blocks just fault blocks, and they are. But there's a better way to refer to them. Now let me just draw the fault plane over here. And imagine you were like a little miner and you drilled a shaft and went over to examine the face of this fault underground. And here you are, you're underground. Wow, that fault's so cool. Well, where would you hang your lantern? Like this is like a, 19th century miner. He's got like a little gas light and he's got to hang it up somewhere. He would hang his lantern on this wall in front of him in this fault block. So this is called the hanging wall. Isn't that cute? Okay, where are his feet? He's standing right here in this fault block. That's where his feet are. So this is called the foot wall. I don't know if this is just a cheeky way that folks teach how to memorize what these are called, or if like this is the official scientific definition. But that's what these are called, right? So if we go back over here, this is our hanging wall and this is our foot wall. And that's the more accurate way to describe these faults. So in a normal fault, the hanging wall moves down relative to the foot wall. And in a thrust fault, the hanging wall moves up relative to the foot wall. Okay, so our third and final fault is going to be transform faults. And all a transform fault is where two fault blocks are grinding past one another. They're not pushing together or pulling apart, they're just kind of sliding past one another. So for this one, the easiest way to show it is actually in map view, right? So we're like bird's eye perspective looking down at the ground. And if you had a transform fault running across the landscape like this, it could be the case that they're both moving, sliding, or it could be that one is stationary and the other is moving. But either way, the sense of motion is that one of these fault blocks is sliding past the other and vice versa. And one way you can describe the motion on transform faults, it'll be easier actually if I change the orientation of our view, okay? So now we've just changed the view so that the fault is running horizontal, this block is moving left, this block is moving right. And one way to describe these faults is that you look at the fault block that, say you were standing here and you're looking at this fault block over here and it's moving to the left. So you could call this a left lateral transform fault because this one's moving to the left. The thing is, you might think, well, what about this one? It's moving to the right. Well, if you stood on this one and looked at this one, I mean, imagine you flipped this upside down, the arrows would not change. And then this block would just look like this. Either way, the relative sense of motion on the block across from you would be to the left. It is a left lateral transform fault. You could imagine all we do is change the arrows. Now, yeah, it's more confusing, but you're standing on this one, you look here, it's moving to the right. It's easier to imagine this way. You're standing on this one, you're looking at this block, it's moving to the right. This is now a right lateral transform fault. Okay, there's one last thing to keep in mind here. There is often a transform component to any fault. Now, try to imagine if we could look at this fault. Imagine you were that miner and you were looking at the fault plane. Well, it wouldn't look like this. You wouldn't see it in cross-section view. You'd be looking straight at it. So let's just draw this silly rectangle and let's imagine we're in that mine shaft and we're looking at this, and it's a wall, but it's a fault plane. And since this is a normal fault, this hanging wall is moving down. Okay, the fault plane is moving down. If it was a thrust fault, it'd be going up. It's probably not actually going perfectly down. There is often a transform or lateral component to its motion. And so really, it might look something like this. And so it is a normal fault. The hanging wall is still going down, but it's not going down at a perfectly straight angle. It has some slight kick out in this direction to it. This is called transtension. The forces for a normal fault are extensional. They're moving apart from one another, creating tension, and then there's a transform component, transtension. So let's reverse these forces. Okay, now they're coming into one another. This is a thrust fault, or you could call it a reverse fault. Look at that, I accidentally came into something I should have covered earlier. Remember, we had our normal fault. This is how it's normal to happen. The rock falls down. Well, the reverse of normal is the rock goes up. So a thrust fault can also be called a reverse fault. So our forces are compressing together. The hanging wall is moving up. This is a thrust or reverse fault. And if you were the miner looking straight at it, well, you'd be looking at the fault plane, and look at this arrow, it would be moving up. It would be moving up. But like we just said, it's kind of hard for things to go perfectly up and down in nature. Things really aren't perfect. So it's probably going up at some angle. And the opposite of transtension, right? We have compression. Look at that. This is transpression. Transform, tension, transtension, transform, compression, transpression, okay? That's where those terms come from. So to recap, the main stress environments we can have are compression, where rocks push together. Where that happens, you're gonna get a thrust or reverse fault, where the hanging wall gets thrust over the footwall, and often this forms mountains. You could have an extensional environment where rocks are being pulled apart, and this will cause the hanging wall to slide down relative to the footwall and create a normal fault, often resulting in a basin or some lowland. You could have a transform environment where rocks are forced past one another in a nearly vertical fault environment. And then realistically, you have some combination of all of this, where you have compression with a transform component, which is transpression. And so the rock is being pushed up, but at an angle. Or you can have an extensional regime with a transform component, transtension, and it's the opposite of all that. So you have a normal fault that's sliding down obliquely, and all these forces are constantly at work and interacting with one another. And this is the reason our landscape looks the way it does. So try to keep these concepts in mind the next time you're looking at the mountains or some lowlands or where a lake is. Like, is this a transtensional basin maybe? It becomes really fun to keep this in mind and try to put together why things are the way they are. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed this one. I love talking about this stuff. I'm sure to do a deeper dive on it at some point in the future. But for now, if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments and I'll get to them as soon as I can. And until next time, stay curious.